Well, good Monday morning. I hope you rested well last night. We've had some weather come through and raining, wet, just sort of yucky outside, but it's going to be a beautiful day. Hope that you had a good weekend. I hope that you had time to worship with your faith family, either in person or on live stream some way or another. You're always welcome to join us at Towering Oaks Baptist Church if you are unable to, your church doesn't have live stream. I can't imagine that. I think everybody in the world has live stream now. As a matter of fact, if you're a believer, there are more services and more things on the web and more available now than ever before. Makes it really challenging for preachers because there's so many good ministers out there, good preachers out there, that you can listen to some mighty good preaching and teaching. Of course, there's some bad stuff out there too, so I hope you're careful in who you choose to listen to. Yesterday, I had the wonderful privilege in the early hour to do Bible study time with our young adults. I tell you what, the young adults at our church excite me. Nothing invigorates me and excites me more than to be around them and to talk with them, to hear their faith and hear about their journey, and it encourages me so much. One of the topics of discussion yesterday had to do with the traditional Christmas and how we do traditional Christmas. I like to read, and there's one book that I've enjoyed through the time is God with Us, the Miracle of Christmas. It's a John MacArthur book, and there's a section in there on Christians and Christmas, and I wanted to share that with you this morning before we got to our devotion time, and our devotion time being just a little bit shorter than some of the others. But let me have you read along with me. I've got it here for you, and so I'm going to bring up that scene. Let's see, get rid of the webcam so that you can see it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I wanted to read it and have you read along. It says, Christmas is a holiday, as a holiday was not observed until well after the biblical era. The early church of the New Testament celebrated Jesus' resurrection, but not his birth. In fact, Christmas was not given any kind of official recognition by the church until the mid-5th century, partly because so many Christmas customs seem to have their roots in paganism. Christians have often been resistant to some of the rituals of the holiday. The Puritans in early America rejected Christmas celebrations altogether. They deliberately worked on December 25th to show their disdain. A law passed in England in 1644 reflected a similar Puritan influence. The law made Christmas Day an official working day. For a time in England, it was literally illegal to cook plum pudding or mince pie for the holidays. Christians today are generally not opposed to celebrating Christmas. The holiday itself is nothing, and observing it is not a question of right or wrong. As Paul wrote, one man regards one day above another, another regards every day alike. Let each man be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God, and he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat and gives thanks to God. Romans 14:5 and 6. Every day, including Christmas, is a celebration for us who know and love him. How we observe Christmas is the central issue. Do we observe it for the Lord's sake or for our own sinful self-gratification? Do we even think about why and how we celebrate it? That is the heart of the matter. Christmas is an opportunity for us to exalt Jesus Christ. We ought to take advantage of it. I appreciated those words. I thought that would go along with one of the questions asked in that class yesterday, is they talked about Christmas and the whole idea of some of the rituals that we have and some of the traditions we have with Christmas. Seems to me that all of them came away saying that we need to be sure that the focus is in the right place when we come to celebrating Christmas. So it was a good time, and I wanted to share that with you. Last night, we had a meeting of those that are thinking about going to Israel with us on our next trip. I let them know what this current situation is. and had a good meeting. And I think we will, if we get to take this next trip, it'll be the longest trip I have ever taken. Will probably end up being about 12 or 13 days touring. And instead of, we normally have 9 or 10 days touring. And so it would be a couple of extra days for us to go to Petra and do some things. That excited me too. So I just had one of those nights I came home and just started thinking and was excited about what a great day it was to be in the house of the Lord and be with fellow believers. We began yesterday the second week of Advent. The candle for the second week of Advent is the Bethlehem candle, and the theme is the theme of preparation. And yesterday morning in our message at Towering Oaks, we looked at Luke chapter 1, verses 5 through 17. I want to continue this morning in verse 18 and go a little bit further and talk more about the preparation for the coming of Messiah. So if you have your Bibles, follow along with me beginning in verse 18, and we'll read this morning. And Zacharias said to the angel, "How shall I know for certain? For I am an old man and my wife is advanced in years." The angel has just told him that they're going to have a baby, and he's well past the childbearing years. And the angel answered and said to him, "I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. And behold, you shall be silent and unable to speak until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words. Believe my words, which shall be fulfilled in their proper time." And the people were waiting for Zacharias and were wondering at the delay in the temple. But when he came out, he was unable to speak to them, and they realized that he had seen a vision in the temple. And he kept making signs to them and remained mute. And it came about when the days of his priestly service were ended that he went back home. Wow, we look at this. You know, John the Baptist is the baby that's going to be born to Zacharias and Elizabeth. And John the Baptist is the morning star that announces the dawn. You know, that star, that bright star that's, while it's still dark, but you see it, we call it the morning star. That's John. John appears as the harbinger of something that's great about to come. And Zacharias, while we think now he maybe didn't understand all that's going to take place, when we get to the end of chapter 1 and he sings his song, we see that he is beginning to understand all that's going on here. But at this point, Zacharias reminds us a little bit of Thomas. You remember Thomas, the disciple who doubted the resurrection. Pardon me. And Thomas said, "Unless I see the prints in his hands and put my finger into his side, I won't believe." And Jesus met him right there at the point of his unbelief and brought him along. And the thing is, Jesus will meet you where you are. And Thomas was given proof and he believed. And in this dialogue, the angel tells Zacharias and Elizabeth that they're going to have a son. And Zacharias says, you don't know who you're talking to. I'm an old man. And I just imagine the dialogue in my own mind as the angel pulls rank and he says, "You may be an old man, but I'm Gabriel and I stand in the presence of God, and God sent me to tell you this. How dare you argue with me?" But you know, that's the way we are. So many times God gives us something and we are sort of like Zacharias, and we come back and say, "You don't understand. Here I am. I'm just Tommy Pierce. I can't do that. I've got these limitations. I've got that limitation. There's no way that this could happen." That's sort of what Zacharias was doing. He couldn't believe the good news chiefly because of his age and because of what he perceived to be his limitations. You know, our age can be a barrier, whatever age we are. We can say, "Hey, we're too young." I remember as a young pastor, I had a church at 18 years old. That's hard to believe now, but I used to make the excuse, "Well, I'm young." And then, you know, what's your excuse? We have excuses for every age. And we get to be a little bit older sometimes, and we believe that our effectiveness for God is restricted. And so what we want to do is we want to understand that while how God uses us may change, our effectiveness is not a change. Is not affected because God is the one who makes us and uses us in different ways and different levels of effectiveness. If an angel said to you, "Your prayer is heard," what would it mean for you? Actually, what are we praying? How are we praying? Are we praying for God to use us, for us to be effective? Are we praying for God to use us to prepare others for his coming? What is the too good to be true news in your life? It could be that you have given up believing that God can bring things, can use you because of where you are in life. Maybe it's physical, maybe it's financial, maybe it's because of some impediment of some kind. But I want you to remember that there are people who have been effective well on into older age. We don't have to go all the way back to Caleb, who, when he was 80, said, "Give me that mountain." We don't have to go back to Moses. We can look and see people today. I look around and see people in our own church like Dave Easterly and Dak Wright and different ones well up into their 90s, and seeing where they are. So whatever may seem too good to be true for you, I want you to remember Zacharias. So, another thing, sometimes we get tired of waiting for God's answer, and we take things into our own hands. God told Abraham that he would be the father of a great nation. And he and Sarah were old, and Sarah was barren, and Abraham said, "This can't be." And so he decided to help God along, and he took for himself a handmaiden in order to help God out. Sometimes that's what we do, is we try to run ahead of God. We take the wrong job. We try to run away. We move from one place to another. I see people all the time that they get frustrated where they are in a church, and so they just run from church to church to church to church, and they never do really become effective and become planted where they are, because they're always trying to help God out instead of letting God form them sometimes through suffering and hardship and difficult times. It was apparent when Zacharias came out of the temple that something had happened there. An authentic experience with God is always discernible. You can always see it there. Zacharias couldn't pass on God's blessing because he was mute. What happened normally is the priest, when he came out from offering the sacrifice of incense, he would come out and he would bless the people, let them know that the prayers had been offered and God had heard and all of that sort of thing. He came out and he couldn't speak. He was silent. And so the crowd, what's going on here? He was late coming out. Not only was he late coming out, when he came out, he could not talk to them. And, I think one of the things that we learn here is that his worship experience with God was not the routine thing. So often what happens is when we have this expectation of this is what things are supposed to be like, and this is the order, and here's how it's supposed to happen. And Zacharias learned, hey, what happens when you have an encounter when you go to the temple? What happens when you have an encounter with God when you go to church?